We're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingmen Show. I'm Drew Brown. We're here to inspire, entertain, and learn so we can all grow. Happiness and serenity are the keys. To you, my friend, my wingman, my main man, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Paul Thompson. Hey, Paul.
Good morning, Mr. Drew. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard from the one and only Drew Brown, Dark Gable, the American Dream. He's the man, the myth, the legend. He's the pilot's pilot, the role model's role model, and most importantly, his royal fullness. Thank you for listening to the podcast, looking at the podcast. And if you could, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. We would appreciate it. I'm doing very good this morning, Mr. Drew. How are you?
I'm doing great. You ready to start this show?
I'm ready.
All right, well, check this out. This morning when I was taking a shower, Paul, I was actually washing the bottom of my feet and something happened. I was actually grateful for I have all the feeling in the bottom of my feet. Now, you're probably saying, what the hell has that got to do with anything? And it leads me to this story. Paul, a very good friend of mine, probably my best friend, he one day took me into an operating room against all rules. So he had me covered from head to toe. I was like his assistant or something like that. And I knew that if I kind of blew it, he would 100% get in trouble. So I had to be real cool. And if you know me, I kind of overacted even. You know, I was writing little notes and things like that. Anyway, he proceeded to bring me into this operating room and they rolled in this patient. I was wondering, you know, what is this? Anyway, the doctor I was with is the like highest of all surgeons. I mean, he's way up there. The guy who was doing this procedure was just a general surgeon. No big deal, but I see there's a pecking order in that also. So anyway, he was really excited. My friend was in there. So they just proceeded to talk. They took the covers off this dude's feet. But it was the most hard. You think a horror movie's bad. He had diabetic feet. And his toes looked like a horror film. Well, as I sit there and going, well, okay, gotta go. The surgeon takes a garden shear. That's what it looked like to me because it was. It might have been very clean, but it was a garden shear and proceeded to clip his toes off. Me, I don't even do blood, Paulie. Paul, I don't do blood. I'm just not, I don't do dead. I don't do blood. That's not me. It's not who I am. And I had to stand there and watch this. So what is the meaning of all this? I have now diabetes. I've had diabetes for a while. It is totally controlled through diet now. Okay. I went through the insulin period. I went through the oral period. I really haven't ever gone through a period where I let it get out of control. But what happened to this guy was he had diabetic feet and they cut off his toes. And I have a cousin who died from this disease. He came here with one leg, honest to God, in his bag for a family reunion. He had a Cinnabon and an orange pop. They took his other leg and now, God bless it, his physical body is gone. My point is, I was now rubbing the bottom of my feet. And usually, you know, you do things like that without thinking. I am so grateful that I have feeling. And that just starts my gratitude list. My daddy said a long time ago, anytime you're feeling bad, you just start your gratitude list and start off with 10 fingers and 10 toes. And if you can start from there, work your way up. Anyway, I say all that because of the medical part of COVID. Okay, it's now every day. That's the top story. People are dying, and now it's affecting children. Okay, Paul, this is very unacceptable. This is way past acceptable. I feel like we're in Night of the Living Dead.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think this was a plandemic that was planned? No, I have a couple of friends that believe that. One works in a research lab.
Right. You should stop
outside this
talking
country
to your friends. Get new friends.
Well, this is like an extended relative who works in a research lab.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, not a little more valid than the Uber driver or the, you know.
Yeah, it's still internet. It's not the national knowledge of scientists.
Oh, this is a scientist.
I know, but it's his opinion. not the entire world scientist state. It's him against them.
It doesn't matter because it's here, so we got to deal with it.
Right. You know, Albert Einstein, this is a funny story. It brings me to that. The theory of relativity during Hitler's time, Hitler once had 40 scientists sign a letter saying that the theory of relativity was incorrect. If it was myself, I know I'd have been really furious and tried to prove them wrong. And Albert Einstein brilliantly just said, if it was wrong, all you needed was one signature.
Yeah, well, I've heard that there's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, amongst healthcare workers. In fact, we know a few nurses, in the family or friends of ours that they're not working directly in the operating rooms, but everybody seems to be affected. I read where they were even looking at triage care, where your son's a doctor, your son's a big-time doctor. Well, they've got to decide who gets care and who doesn't. I saw this thing about Idaho, for example, which is not a populous state, but they've got their own kind of managed care, where if it doesn't look like you're going to make it, you're going to give you, I think, called comfort care. We'll give you something to feel good because we don't have any beds to put you in. You're not going to get the special treatment because the COVID patients are taking everything up. So during 2 administrations ago, I remember there was talk by one of the presidential candidates about death panels. If healthcare comes in, they're going to have death panels and decide who died. They're doing that now.
Wow.
They're doing that right now in different places and maybe more places. The advice is don't do anything high risk to get you in the hospital because you may not go, which is really bad. I mean, I'm driving yesterday all day and hope nothing happens. So this first world technology and efficiency we have in this country, we're blessed to have it, but you may not have it because the rooms are full. The rooms are full of people who shouldn't be there.
Well, Dr. Paul, let me ask you this. What about the unvaccinated? Should they get the same amount of care as the vaccinated if they made a decision to be unvaccinated? I'm not saying one way or another, just like your opinion.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Now, the unvaccinated, I don't know, maybe if they're not too far gone, maybe they should switch with the people who are coming in. I don't know the degrees of sickness, but there are a lot of people. Some would suggest, well, if somebody needs an operation or something that's life-saving and they can't get it, that the people that tell them not to come to the hospital should be unvaccinated people. They should be made to call them and say, sorry, there's no beds available because I'm occupying. Heard that a guy say that on the radio yesterday. It kind of made a little bit of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a psychological thing. But I saw it today also where Qantas Airlines won't let you fly internationally if you've been unvaccinated. United Airlines came out with a thing saying they want everybody to be vaccinated. And if you're not, I think they're going to give you unpaid leave.
Wow.
I think I saw that recently. So you could say, well, that's just a mood to get everybody into the new world order. So we got robots going in our skins and control. In France, Germany, I think they're revolting against it. It's a major mess.
I seen kids with signs, "Don't take my breath away." My granddaughter's with me, and she's wearing a mask where I go. And here's the point again. Is there a chance? Is there a possibility? And are you talking about dead? Okay, we're wearing a mask. It's not that hard of a decision, Paul.
It's not that big a deal. The mask's not a big a deal. I got designer masks and comfort one. I got a bunch of the N95s, and they're cheap.
Well, guess who's going to the hospital, Dr. Paul? Who shouldn't be there also? People who are now dying and getting really injured from extreme weather. And a statement was just made, which is definitely true. I never heard it nationally. But this is going to be the new norm, okay? This extreme weather is because of people 50 years ago didn't give a shit. And people 100 years ago gave less of it. So we are now experiencing that. If we don't want it to get worse, something must be done. And I just never heard it like that. And people are now dying. I mean, you and I come from New York. They're flooding and dying of weather in New York. All we had was bad snow and galoshes.
Right, galoshes. But you're old if you remember that. They talk about, Queens. I know Queens Boulevard pretty well. I mean, it's a big boulevard. They talk about flooding in Queens Boulevard. There's no water near Queens Boulevard. There's no water at all. And, people drowning in basements. Because a lot of times, folks are making money, so they got them packed downstairs and because everything's so expensive. So you got folks living illegally in a lot of places. Usually they burn up in a fire. Now they're getting flooded out. The weather's changing. When they were looking at a new Amazon headquarters or a bigger headquarters, they were looking at New York City. I think they decided to put it in Virginia, but they were looking at New York City real hard. And they were going to put it on City Island. And I remember even when they were considering it, they were already considering climate change and how they would have to build it up so that the water wouldn't overrun in the next 50 or 60 years. They were even planning that. This is like 3 years ago. But nobody would have thought that this would have just happened all of a sudden, because that storm came up like I-95 and just tore up New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. It pretty much went a straight path. And the system can't handle it. I was talking to the great grand Ayatollah a couple of days ago, and his sense is that there's a lot of junk in the system that has never been cleaned up, and that contributes to the overflow of things. And part of that is cleaning.
Yeah, we talked about it today. Remember, I told you something? That's amazing. You said infrastructure. Paul, tell us, we need skilled workers. They cannot find them. That means all these jobs that they just made $1 trillion they put into the infrastructure, they're going to go to foreigners because we don't have the skilled workers to actually fill those jobs.
Yeah, the advantage of trade schools. I may go back to school myself, learn how to do a couple little things. Not just build websites and play video games, which is a lot of what the culture's been doing. Can't do squat.
That's true. Well, we're coming up to an anniversary of 20 years ago. Where were you during 9/11? It's one of those times. I remember when Kennedy was assassinated. I remember where I was. And when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, I remember where I was. And I also remember where I was when 9/11 happened. And that was 20 years ago. And I only bring that up because it's one of those memories forever. I bring that up because of the name Osama bin Laden. He's part of another club that you and I had talked about earlier that I think is an amazing club. And it's the 54 Club. We just lost a very famous and great actor, Michael Williams. We don't know yet to what, but he was found dead at 54. Dr. Paul, will you take us into the depth of the 54 Club? Because it's twice the 27 Club, which you'll let us know about also. Incredible.
Yeah, the 54 Club. A lot of these people died at age 54. Yeah, Michael Williams. He was famous for being on the HBO series The Wire. Admittedly, I only watched like 1 or 2 episodes.
Greatest TV show I think ever. It was one of those that were really good.
But I remember the 2 that I watched, 2 or 3 I watched. He had segments in there, and he took over the whole screen. But I also watched a thing called Boardwalk Empire, which I liked a lot. But yeah, he was Chalky White. He stole the scene.
Chalky White.
I don't think there's any real gangster named Chalky White. There was a Chalky Wright who was a boxer in California. I did a little. Every once in a while, they take stories and they have real stuff and they have some make-believe stuff and they mix it in there. That's why I say, the events in this story are fictional. Any relations to persons either living or dead are, coincidental. In other words, I make up a little this, I make up a little that. But he was tremendous. He was the Boardwalk Empire was great. But I remember, not to go too deep into it, season 2, the last 2 episodes he was in, those last 2 episodes were better than the whole 3 seasons put together. I still remember.
Well, I always thought when he acted, he wasn't acting.
Because he reminded me of people that I know.
Yes, he was a real gangster too. He wasn't out of character. He was terrific. He was scary.
Yeah. He was a drug guy. He was everything guy. They said it was fentanyl, opioids. Well, that's what I've heard. I'm not a coroner.
Who else was in that 54 Club?
Oh, there's a singer, Luther Vandross. I think he had kidney problems. John Ritter from Three's Company, fairly popular TV actor. Michael Landon, who was in a series called Bonanza. I like that a lot. And Little House on the Prairie. I think he was an athlete too for a while.
Wow.
Let's see. The rest are called The Ultimate Warrior.
Yes, he was
heart
the
failure.
bomb.
Yeah. A lot of those guys are good. A lot of them had the similar kinds of things. I think the Macho Man Randy Savage might have had the same problem. I don't know his age, but heart disease, steroid use, steroids affect the hearts. It's kind of a common problem. Robert Palmer, he was a singer.
Yeah.
Addicted to Love. You might as well face You're Addicted to Love. That was a good song. Tina Marie, the singer, she sang with Rick James. Great voice. Great singer. And Kenneth Williams. Those are the big names that I have lit now. Now you want to hear about the 27-year-olds?
The 27 Club, 100%.
Yeah,
you and I were talking about it, and this is double 27, 54.
Double 27. Jimi Hendrix, the great guitarist, Janis Joplin, singer, Jim Morrison of the Doors, a guy named Brian Jones of Rolling Stones, Robert Johnson, the blues man, Kurt Cobain, and Amy Winehouse. Very popular people. And I think it was all drugs.
Yeah.
And then there's people that they thought would die, and there's, back in 1969 or whatever, they're around today.
It's a bad disease. And, a lot of people look at their lives and think because they have money, how could they do this? They were perfect. Chris Rock, or somebody, I don't know what comedian, tasted and ate food around the world. And they said he hung himself in the hotel. You can't get a better job.
Anthony Bourdain.
Correct. You can't get a better job than tasting food around the world. Yes. So, you and I both we were both born in Harlem. We both grew up in New York City in a way of not poverty, but project apartment life. That's how we grew up in the streets. And all we wanted was fame and fortune. I mean, it's almost like every kid's dream is fame and fortune. And now that I've gotten older and I look back, be careful what you ask for, because fame and fortune could not be taken by many people. And if you look at all the people who get quick fame and fortune, a lot of athletes, a lot of entertainers, they don't know what to do. I had a cousin, he was a crackhead, but, $5 a day can't kill him. He couldn't go buy 2 pounds of crack. So be careful what you ask for. I was fortunate enough to grow up with the most famous man in the world. And it was not fun for him much of the time. He's trying to get a meal and people would take the fork out of his hand to get an autograph. People would crowd him and he couldn't go places, Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. And after a while, there's no more going to Walmart. There's no more going to movies with a friend. This is the worst part. You don't even know who is your friend. That's why my dad was a true friend, because he said what he had to say, whether you like me or not. But when it comes to, women and friends, you have a lot of money. A lot of people's attitude changes.
Mm-hmm. How was he with Ali? Did he ever snap back, or was he gracious, or how did he?
I got to say, there's a lot of things about the champ that I could say, and he's a human being. Mm-hmm. He was the most gracious athlete, entertainer, person I've ever met. He not ever turned down an autograph, no matter how long he had to stay. Even, and this is incredible, I saw him years later in Memphis in one of the malls. I think it was the Hickory Hood Mall back then.
Okay. Hickory Ridge.
All the Mall of Murder. Remember that one?
Anyway, yeah. Mall of used to be great, but that's another story. It was.
Anyway, I saw him and the kids were younger, and he already had Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. He had it so bad, he even asked me how my dad was, and my dad physically had passed many years before that. But anyway, I remember him signing a baseball as he was walking, and it took him maybe 10 seconds to actually write out M-U-H, and it was the most incredible scene you could ever see. So as far as that, he loved his people. He truly did love his people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fame and fortune. Sometimes it's good to be anonymous, so you can just kind of go out and do your thing.
Well, a very wealthy man, his name, I'll tell you, Brad Butler, who was a father figure to me. He was the CEO and chairman of the board of Procter & Gamble. We're talking way up there. And he once told me the greatest gift God ever gave him was anonymity.
That's fine. I never heard of him. I worked for Procter and Gamble for a summer. I never heard that. That was a long time ago. I never heard that name, so I agree.
Yep. And when we were talking about growing up, also, you and I have something in common that's really incredible. And we are both only children.
True.
And there are a lot of advantages to being an only child. A lot of advantages. And one of them is Christmas and Hanukkah for me. Everything was mine. I knew that from the beginning. Any holiday, everything's mine, 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 mine. Like those seagulls, mine, 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 mine. Another advantage is I can play by myself. I can hang out by myself. I love myself. You know, talking about relationships real quick. When you think that somebody else, you can't live without somebody else, you think very little of yourself.
I agree.
You and I have traveled the world. There are billions of people out there. Anytime somebody doesn't want to be with you, bye-bye. Yeah. Bye-bye. See you later. Anyway, that's an advantage of being an only child and having parents that believe in you. Okay. But the only child thing comes when you grow up where we come from in the ghetto. You don't have any backup. I really wanted to say you ain't got no backup. But my daughter, Taryn, if she watches, she'll edit all my speaking problems. So anyway, you don't have any backup. And that's not a good thing in the hood. It's just not a good thing.
Right.
So the Wingmen, I'll start off real quick, but the Wingmen this week are going to be my cousin Larry and my cousin Butchie. Okay, they lived in the building behind me. My mother and their mother became very good friends. And we went through a lot together, which is not important at this time. But anyway, they were to me my cousins. And they were gangsters. They were little hood gangsters. I mean, for real, like knives, guns. Butchie wound up in a wheelchair, getting shot in the back. And my cousin Larry died from a drug overdose years later. But what I'm saying is they were my backup. And anytime I got into a position and I could use their name, I did. And it actually worked. I believe you have a wingman too.
Yeah. No, it's funny. You talk about being only child. It is good to have a team behind you sometimes. Sometimes one versus one versus many is not good. Those are not good odds. Everybody's not fair. Life isn't fair and everybody isn't fair. But remember we had a guy one time, the people I was with everybody was pretty good. Everybody's pretty good. Most folks ended up okay. Except for one guy that committed a few murders and a few that did go to jail for long periods of time. Maybe they might have died there, unfortunately. Well, for the most part, everybody was pretty normal. There were some gangsters and some bad gangsters that would kind of come around when we were real little. And we had a couple come around one time that we really couldn't handle. But there was a major gangster that lived about 2.5 houses away. And this was Joe Harkness. And he was a major gangster. He was in and out of jail all the time, fighting with the police all the time. Never heard of anybody else doing that. He seemed to walk around pretty good. But the thing was that at that time, this is a long time ago, gangsters, gangbangers, whatever we call them at that time, had really good manners. Criminals, there's certain things that criminals didn't do. Typically they didn't bother children. They didn't bother women ever. Were very respectful. They typically didn't curse around women. They never asked a female for money. A little small thing. Men have changed a lot. A lot of things they just wouldn't do. And sometimes if they broke those rules, they would be very, very penalized. I know where I went to school, there was a school for deaf children. Were they blind or deaf? I think blind and deaf. And it was right next to a very, 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 very bad area. You know what happened in that area? Nothing. Zero. Anything happened to those kids, death penalty to those who done it. There are parts of Jersey like that too. Certain things, nothing happens. Steal something, it'll be there. It might be a hand with it or a finger. That stuff did happen. But, one time we had a bad problem with these guys with knives coming at us, and we didn't know what to do. Ran it by Joe Harkin. Didn't see him much. Sometimes he's coming after a day of work, which was a day of work and doing bad things. Remember one time we had these guys Blah, 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 blah. He said, oh, where is this? They said, what do they look like? Okay, fine. And like the next day, like never saw him again. Nothing ever happened. Because there's a pecking order thing. He was high in the pecking order. He wasn't like Tony Soprano, but he was like 2/3 of the way up there.
Right.
He would be like the Sammy the Bull Gravano type versus with John Gotti. Not the number one guy, but he's like 2 or 3. And 2 or 3, he's got a lot of pull. And from, a time of terror campaign, it goes to, we're in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood all of a sudden. It's like, what happened to these guys? They all just disappeared. And he would walk by, he said, how things going? Everything's good. It's okay, fine. But, meantime, you could tell something had happened. And he's just making sure that nothing happened. He ended up dying of AIDS a long time ago. He was a drug user. He was a heroin user. And get some bad needles. And that's how he went. He died young. He seemed like an old guy at that time. When I saw him near the end of his life, he was probably in his 30s. Yeah. So that's my little story. So we had a wingman who was a gangster. Right. He was always nice to us.
And he took care of you. And the really cool thing is that where we grew up, they did have some morals. Things have changed now with the morals. But guess what? I now have a PSA from the Wingmen Show.
Oh, I'm paying attention.
Love yourself. Be your own best friend. If somebody doesn't love you, learn how to say bye-bye. Learn how to say bye-bye. The world is a very big place. And there is someone here on this planet who will love you to death. This has been a PSA from the Wingmen Show.
Very good. Yes, another PSA, please, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you like what you're seeing, pass it on to your friends. We'll have some good content for you coming in the future, things on the website.
What's the website?
Website is Wingmen Show, WINGMEN, Wingmen Show, SHOW.com. WINGMENSHOW.com. You can see all the episodes and you can see everything.
The music of the week is an album called Unwrap, and it's hip hop and jazz without any cursing, without any of that part, but it's real funky. Unwrap.
Unwrap. I'll have to look at that.
Check it out. Paul, thanks for doing the show.
Thanks for having me on. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. We'd appreciate it.
100%. We hope you enjoyed our show. We truly thank you for your time. It's our most valuable commodity. So we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. Dr. Paul Thompson, Drew Brown, we both say goodbye. See you guys later.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.